and welcome to World Turtle Day. World Turtle Day was started 20 years ago as a celebration of turtles and tortoises worldwide. This year is the 20th anniversary, and the focus is really on endangered species of turtles and tortoises in their native habitats, and educating people and encouraging them to conserve those species in their local areas. We have a special endangered turtle here in Kane County that we're going to be spending an entire program here talking to you about. We're really excited that you're here to join us for a release of one of our native turtles. And we have a special guest with us today. It's a wildlife biologist for the Forest Preserve District of Kane County. And I'm going to turn it over to him in a little bit, and he'll tell you what turtle I'm talking about. So I'm Barb McKittrick. I'm the environmental educator with the Forest Preserve District of Kane County, and we welcome you to this program. We're going to spend a little bit of time walking out to the release site where the turtles are going to be let go, and we'll stop along the way to tell you interesting facts about the turtle, its life history, and field marks, and conservation efforts that we have going on here in the Forest Preserve District of Kane County. Since we are still in the midst of our COVID crisis, I do want to assure you that we're maintaining safe distances. I'll have my mask on when I'm filming, and we're always staying 6 feet apart, although the wildlife biologist won't have a mask so that you can hear him well. But be assured that we're remaining safely distant, and we hope that you are at home too. And thanks again for joining us today. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to the wildlife biologist of the Forest Preserve District of Kane County, Mr. Bill Graser.
All right, thank you for the introduction, Barb. Excited to be here for a big day for our turtle conservation efforts here in Kane County. We have our first ever batch of juvenile Blandings turtles that were head started over the winter. And we're going to be releasing them today back into the wild here in Kane County. And we're going to talk a little bit about why this species is endangered and what we're doing to help conserve them here locally. All right, well, I'm going to share with you a little bit of basic information about the Blandings turtle and its biology. The range of the Blandings turtle is centered on the Great Lakes in the United States and Canada, and their range basically extends all the way from Nebraska to Nova Scotia in scattered populations. They're a medium-sized turtle, and here's the shell of one, and one of their characteristics is this domed carapace, which is the top of the shell. And you can't really see it well, but they have this dark background, and when they're alive, they have bright yellow coloration. And also, their throat is very bright yellow, and that's another characteristic that is unlike any other turtle in this area. So, they're medium-sized, and they're also semi-aquatic, which basically means that they don't just live in the water. There are parts of their ear throughout their life cycle where they go quite a ways away from the water. And we'll get into a little bit more about how that gets them into some trouble and puts them at risk sometimes. But when they're in the water, their diet is primarily carnivorous. They'll eat fish, crayfish, insects, and things of that nature is mostly what their diet comprises of. Throughout the year, they go through some general phenological cycles. November through March is their overwintering period, and they spend that in the water, under the muck. They bury themselves, and their metabolism slows down. And interestingly, they're able to take up oxygen through their cloaca. You can look up what that is if you don't already know. But usually about March, they start emerging, and shortly thereafter, they seek out other turtles. It's their mating season from March to April. And then the next kind of major season is when the females venture out to deposit their eggs. And that happens in late May through early July, generally speaking. And these females can go hundreds of yards out of the wetland to seek the right kind of soils and light conditions to put their eggs on dry land. And that puts them at risk for mortality, as we'll learn about later. After that period, probably about September, if they're lucky, the eggs will start to hatch in the nest. And then those hatchlings will have to make their way from wherever that nest is, even if it's hundreds of yards, back to a wetland, which is also a pretty dangerous journey. then they spend most of the rest of the late summer and fall just feeding, basking, and then they make their way back to their overwintering site. And that kind of completes the general cycle of the year.
Okay, Bill, can you tell us about the status of the Blandings turtle here in Illinois?
Yeah, so by status, Barb's referring to their legal status, or in this case, their legal protection. So in 1998, they were actually listed as a threatened species in the state of Illinois. And they're mostly throughout their whole range listed as either threatened, endangered, or at the very least a species of concern. So their status is listed heavily throughout their range. In 2009, they were actually shifted to an endangered species in Illinois. So that basically means that there's a potential that they could go extinct in the wild in this state.
Mm-hmm. So, Bill, I know that you mentioned that the Blandings turtle is now endangered. What are the threats to Blandings turtles? Why has that happened?
Yeah, so the way they got to be listed species, essentially historically, over 90% of the wetlands in the state of Illinois were drained or otherwise destroyed. And even the wetlands that survived that great changing of the landscape continue to be lost in modern times, and also they're altered in other ways through invasive species and changes to hydrology. Essentially, the wetlands and habitats that still exist in this ever-changing landscape where we humans are becoming more abundant, and with that, bring other changes like roads. Road mortality is a large source of mortality to these turtles across their range. Also, things like raccoons and skunks can become more abundant in urbanized areas. And the destruction of the turtles' nests is a big contributing factor, the lack of successful reproduction. So that's another factor that contributes to that. And also, believe it or not, unfortunately, there's an illegal trade of species like this. People go into the wild and they take them and they end up sold on the black market. So those are some of the general things that have led to them becoming a species that has become threatened and endangered across their range. All right, so we're out here today getting ready to release our batch of head-started Blandings turtles. In case you're not sure what head starting is and why we might be doing it, head starting is essentially taking juveniles, usually of an endangered or threatened species that is rare, and raising them in captivity for a short time to let them get to a larger size where they'll be less vulnerable to predation and other forms of mortality. So a hatchling Blandings turtle is probably just a little bit bigger than a quarter. And if you put them out in the wild, essentially everything can eat them, from herons to snapping turtles to bullfrogs. If you can get them to a larger size, they stand a much better chance of not getting eaten and therefore surviving. So our good friends at the Kane Forest Preserve District were nice enough to let us establish an agreement with them where we would take our hatchling turtles in August and drop them off in Lake County, and they would raise them and feed them over the winter and help them grow to a larger size. And we just picked them up a couple days ago here in May, and we're going to start putting them back to where they came from. And so just to give you a perspective, I've got two turtles here. This smaller one reached about double the size of what a wild-born hatchling would have reached by this point. And this larger one is 8 or 9 times larger than what a wild-born hatchling would look like right now. So we're giving them a good boost in growth and a better chance of survival once they're out here in the wild. And now you can finally see the yellow throat I was talking about earlier. On the juveniles, it's not quite as bright and impressive as the adults, but you can see it here. So they're 6 grams. These ones are like 11-ish. So they're half-sized, half pint. Uh, turtles are good. I like turtles. All right, exciting day today. We're up here at the Lake County Forest Preserve District to pick up our head started turtles that they've been watching for us over the winter and taking good care of. We're picking up about 10 turtles today, and most of the rest will be picked up in a couple weeks. So this is where everybody's housed, in these bins. The light, and there's Gary in the background taking care of everybody. They're all kept in unique bins, marked. These are the ones that are going home today. You can see they've grown up quite a bit. Some of them over 10 times in size from when we dropped them off. But there's a lot of variation in how much growth we had. Some of these smaller turtles are still almost the size of when we dropped them off. Some of them grow much slower than the other ones. Here's some more of our Kane County turtles. So as you can see, they're being nicely taken care of and growing really well. And very excited to take them home.
So here we are at the edge of the area we're going to be used to release these baby Blandings turtles. And you can see that we've got a lot of pockets of wetland here. Bill, can you tell us a little bit about this ecosystem and the habitat that these turtles like?
Yeah, one of the ideal places to put these juvenile turtles is in a shallow wetland with lots of emergent vegetation, like all of these various sedges and wetland plants. It gives them a lot of places to hide, and their natural pattern blends in really well with the vegetation. So we're going to put them in a place where they can hopefully hide and keep themselves safe and keep growing. And hopefully over the next few years we'll continue to see them as we do our sampling.
Bill, why did the Forest Preserve District get involved with conservation efforts for Blandings turtles?
Well, essentially, preserving and restoring the flora and fauna of Kane County is central to what our Natural Resource Management Department does and to the overall mission of the districts, of the Forest Preserve District. So knowing that we potentially had this endangered species in Kane County, we really set off to learn more about where we had them and delve further into the population so we could learn about what we can do to enhance the populations and increase their chance of a better outcome in the future. We learn about where they are, which is obviously fundamental to protecting them. Beyond that, we move into, once you start catching them, you can learn more about the population itself. How many are there? Is it many males or females, or is it well balanced? Is the age structure well balanced, or are they all very old? So over the years we've learned a lot about that, and we've also delved into other things like working with research partners at universities to study their genetics. We use radio telemetry to find out, are they surviving year to year? Where are they going? Are their needs being met here at the Forest Preserve District on our land? Because we can use that information to improve the habitat here with the hopes that we can meet all their needs here on our property and keep them safe. But also we've realized that our populations are small, and unfortunately that makes them vulnerable. So we've taken other steps like protecting nests in the wild, and since 2011 or so, we've incubated eggs, which helps us avoid the nest being eaten by predators. Usually an entire nest is destroyed when it gets found. So that means no reproductive success that year. And as you can see from this head starting, we've kind of moved to the next phase of that, and not just protecting them in the egg form, but taking them as hatchlings and increasing their odds of survival before we put them back. So those are some examples. And also last summer we started working with staff from the University of Illinois' Wildlife Epidemiology Lab. And we started taking a look at what is the physical health of these populations and the presence and exposure to diseases. All of this information is going to help us better conserve and protect them. And we hope to continue that this upcoming summer.
So I know that we mark the turtles before we release them, and here we are. We're just about to the point that we're going to have the very exciting release. But Bill, why don't you tell us a little bit about how the individual turtles are marked so that you can follow them after release?
Yeah, so I mentioned we hope to see them in the future and document their success. And to do that, they have to be individually marked so we know who they are moving forward. Each of these turtles receives an individual marking or shell notches. You can see these V-shaped notches in the shell, and the position of those tells us who this turtle is when we recapture it again.
All right. Okay, that's really interesting about the notch. Are there any other markings or tags that you use for the turtles to ID them later?
Yeah, we also have a secondary marking, which is to put a pit tag in them, which is essentially the same microchip but smaller that your dog or cat would get at the veterinarian. And that allows us to pick up the animal pretty quickly when we catch it, and we'll scan it with our pit tag reader, and if it has one, its code will pop up and we'll know who it is right away.
Nice. All right, so we're approaching the release site. Bill's got the little baby blandings in that bucket. He's getting out into the water, trying to find a nice safe spot to release these turtles where they're going to be safe from predators and they have the best chance of making it in the wild. It's the big moment, folks. We're going to be releasing the first of the baby blandings turtles, the first of 10. So here goes the little guy in the water now. Oh, already went to hide. Turtle number 2. Oh, there he goes. Trying to find a nice spot to hide. Ooh, down he goes, down in the water. Look at how they camouflage. Hiding already. Here's Bill, about to release another one of the blandings.
Yeah, we're moving about the wetland and we're spreading them out a little bit just so if a predator does get into this area, they don't get a chance to have more than their fair share of the turtles.
Okay, ready, set, go. Look at how quickly those guys disappear. Gone. Here we are, turtle number 5 and 6, ready to meet their new homes. Oh my, look at that guy. Whoa, digging down, swimming down. You can see the little remainder of his blue markings, and then he disappeared. Oh boy, turtle 7 and 8, going for a swim. You can see those blue markings. Each turtle has a different pattern of those blue dots for identification purposes. And they're also nice and useful for tracking the turtle as it dives down. Look at that adorable face.
All right, last 2. Good luck.
Bon voyage. We've got a few minutes to do a question and answer session with Bill. How long does a blandings turtle live in the wild, Bill?
So There have been some long-term studies in Michigan, and they estimate that they have turtles that are over 70 years old in that population. But they do live a long time. In fact, it would take multiple careers to really study them long enough to see how long they can live and what they do in that time.
What would you say is the typical Blanding's turtle home range size, Bill?
So I would say on average it's probably 30 to 40 acres of wetland habitat, but they do move between wetlands and the females nest outside of the wetland. So when you include those areas, it can be quite a bit larger and they can range quite a bit.
How many eggs does a female Blanding's turtle typically lay?
So on average, I'd say around here about 15 eggs, but we have females that have had anywhere from clutch sizes of from 10 all the way up to 23. The size of their body has a lot to do with how many they can hold.
Right. Okay, that's great. Yeah. How old are the baby Blandings when you release them like we did today?
All right, so today the turtles we released were about 9 months old. But like I said earlier, if you compare them to wild-born turtles, they're anywhere from 3 to 9 times the size of what they would be had they just hatched in the wild and made their way to the wetland. But in previous years, we'd released them when they were just a couple weeks old with no head starting.
All right. How many Blanding's turtles, has the Forest Preserve District of Kane County released over the years since the beginning of the conservation program?
Yeah, so through the eggs that have required us to protect and incubate the eggs, we've successfully hatched out about 90% of the eggs and released, up to this year, we released 213 hatchlings back into the places where they came from. And if you include the head starts that we have this year, that's 57 more.
Can you tell me why and when we got involved with head starting turtles?
Yeah, so years of studying these populations, we've unfortunately found that they are quite small, unfortunately, and scattered throughout the county. So that leaves them vulnerable to extinction in the long term. And other counties like Lake and DuPage County have for many years been doing head starting, and they have found that it has helped not just stabilize but increase their population size, which hopefully will make the populations more viable moving into the future, while we work on other things like protecting more land and improving the habitat in ways to meet their needs.
Okay, thank you. Can you tell our viewers how your Blanding's turtle conservation efforts have impacted the work of the Kane County Forest Preserve District?
Yeah, so the research we've been doing since 2009, and we've continued to do, the best use of the data is to take it and use it to implement land management practices in a way that is safe, in a timing that's appropriate to protect these populations, and also put that information in the hands of decision makers who help decide what land will be protected and where restoration happens. We've also been able to target grants and funding opportunities to improve habitat for the Blanding's turtle. And when you improve habitat for a species like this, it obviously benefits a whole bunch of other species that use the same type of habitat. So the benefits go way beyond the turtle. There's a whole host of other people across this region at other agencies that are working towards conserving Blanding's turtles where they work as well. And everyone's always very helpful towards each other. And DuPage County has helped us with incubation. As I mentioned, we have that relationship with Lake County where they head start the turtles for us. But we all try to coordinate with each other to make sure our efforts are having an impact across the region. And we work with the IDNR also to make sure that this information gets to them, and we're working towards helping them with the recovery of this species is our hope.
Nice team effort.
Obviously, the public is our biggest supporter. When they support the Forest Preserve and our efforts to preserve land, we couldn't do any of this without them. But on another level, when the Forest Preserve Foundation was established, we thought an Adopt a Turtle program would be a wonderful way to introduce the foundation to the public in Kane County and also engage them in what we're doing. We started that in 2017, And through the Adopt a Turtle program, we've raised over $12,000 since then. And we've taken that money and put it directly back into Blanding's turtle conservation here in Kane County. We used it to hire additional interns to help with these field projects, and it just allows us to do more of the conservation work that we are doing right now. So we're very thankful to all those who've adopted turtles and joined Team Turtle through the foundation.
Go Team Turtle. If someone wanted to adopt a turtle now, how would they go about doing it?
Information for adopted turtles on the Kane Forest Preserve Foundation's website.
Great, thanks. Bill, I want to thank you for joining us today and teaching us so much about Blanding's turtles. You've really worked hard to help restore the populations of turtles here, and we thank you.
Yeah, I want to thank everyone for joining us, and thank those who have joined Team Turtle, and also thank all the technicians and interns and folks who have helped all these projects in the field over the years. It's by no means a one-man show. A lot of people have helped in these efforts.
Thanks for joining us today to do our live Blanding's turtle release. I hope you learned a little bit about Blanding's turtles and the conservation efforts that we have ongoing at the Forest Preserve District of Kane County.